Yeah, I mean, and Super Nintendo carried it on with the Mario Brothers games. I think
Mario
Yoshi,
World was great. Yoshi, yeah.
Yoshi came out. He had his own game like that. Was that Mario Kart didn't start with that, did it?
Mario Kart was on.
Was it on
Super Nintendo?
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I remember. I was trying to remember if that's what I was playing it on. But like the Mario games were so fun on the Super Nintendo. Like when you got to play Yoshi's, that was an awesome game. And you're right, Super Mario World was a fantastic game.
I played a lot of Fester's Quest. It was an Addams Family game. I don't know why, but me and my
Brian,
buddy, a couple houses down, played that a lot.
I've never heard of that.
We were just so determined to get far, and it was so confusing and ridiculous. And I think it's on like a list of like some of the worst games ever made because it's like almost unbeatable. But we were just so determined, like, no, we can figure this out. It can't be that bad. They would make a game that's not beatable. But I guess it was apparently one of those games, and we never got very far. It was just frustrating as heck.
That was all worth it, though.
Oh yeah,
a lot of people had games that people thought were terrible, but you loved, and you were just like, whatever. Yeah. I like the game. I don't really care. Like I don't really care. And it's usually the
Super
people
Contra.
who couldn't beat the game. You know what I mean? That's what you found out. Like somebody who had trouble with the game. They hated it, and they didn't hate it because they didn't really like it. It's because they couldn't figure out what to do. We've all done it. We've all got frustrated and picked up and go, "Oh, why did I buy this?" Or
can't figure out how the controls work.
Yeah, you can't figure it out. And then you have another friend who's like, "Dude, that game's awesome. I beat it 3 times." You're like, what are you talking about? I was like, "This is the worst game I've ever played." And then you're like, "Damn it, I just don't know what I'm doing."
And then you want to get it again, so well, they did it. I got to do it too.
Yeah, that's why I didn't like Tomb Raider, because I played it and I'm like, what? This game sucks.
But it felt like after that, that's where Sega, I think they got so involved with like the hardware, like, all right, okay, Nintendo they've got the Super Nintendo, we got to beat them. We're gonna have a more powerful console, okay, so because Super Nintendo was, and the Sega Genesis, those were both 16-bit then. Is that?
Yes.
Is that correct? So
16-bit. Because then the next step was 30. The 32-bit was
the 32-bit stuff was kind of a nightmare. I think even for both companies, I think they were diving into like technology started changing very rapidly, and like which technology should we adopt into our system. Sega had their console, and you added on like there's like the 32X. There was a small handful of games, maybe only like 2 that worked with it. And then they had like the Sega CD attachment, and this stuff was all kind of like
it was the same thing. Which they should have made separate systems. They shouldn't have done.
And
they really messed up.
These attachments, they were expensive. These attachments were almost the cost of the console itself that you're adding on, which was a cool concept. It just didn't work because there were no games. So people bought this extra gear. There's only like 2 games coming out for it. Okay, but Sega just kept doing this with this hardware, and I think that's kind of where they dropped the ball. People stopped wanting to invest money in Sega hardware. Because the games just didn't follow.
Well,
so then that's when Nintendo had GameCube. And it was around that time that PS2 came out as well, and they came they came out of nowhere.
You're forgetting my favorite system, and I believe that's Nintendo 64, which was
how could I?
The last cartridge system. Nintendo 64 completely. Sega lost it once. They shouldn't have went towards the CDs. They should have stayed and built off of the Genesis, where Nintendo was like, all right, we got this Nintendo 64. I mean, GoldenEye. That's all you need to say about Nintendo 64. Yep. That's all,
legendary.
That pretty much first-person shooter changed it all.
Super Mario 64 was pretty cool.
Super Mario, and I think that was Doom Fox was on there. Yeah, Doom, right? That was the first.
I think there was a version of Doom. It was horrible.
It wasn't, but that's where it started. But Nintendo 64, you had Rogue Squadron, which was freaking incredible. I still have my Rogue Squadron
No, you're
cartridge.
thinking of. Aren't you thinking of GameCube?
No, Rogue
Yeah, I
Squadron
thought it
was
was.
Rogue Leader
No.
was on GameCube.
Yeah, I still have the box at my parents' house where you.
That was a great game. There's a little bit of history. The company that made the Rogue Squadron, Rogue Leader games, they were actually, I guess, in development a third one. But there's actually a cool video on the internet if you on YouTube if you go look it up. I'm gonna be lazy and not provide you a link to it. I implore you to go digging,
research
and
yourself.
Look it up. The company is called Factor 5, but it's an interesting story. Like some of the people, they were just so hell bent on trying to be able to finish this game. They actually they bankrupted the company, and then they created a new company and brought over all the assets for this game, pretty much illegally. Just because they refused to put it away. They just kept trying to find a way to keep working on this other game when they didn't really even have a legal right to. And they stole a lot of stuff. They didn't pay the employees from the other company before they started this new one. It was kind of a big disaster. But those games that they made were great. It was a sad story. I really wanted to see that game company continue. Because they were adding a lot of realism, from the Star Wars universe into these games, and they even had a couple fun modes. I believe it was in Rogue Leader, the second one, where you would actually play as the Empire, which was a little new aside from the LucasArts computer game TIE Fighter, which was a follow-up to their X-Wing game. But we're not going to really talk about the computer games here, but it was kind of the first where you got to play as the Empire trying to fend off the rebels from taking down the Death Star.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool.
That's
twist
awesome.
To it. But yeah.
Yeah.
Can't believe you tried to skip over the N64.
I don't know how I could forget.
Well,
There were some other good Star Wars games on there. It was the first game I remember seeing the Shadow Troopers on.
Was it? It wasn't the Old Republic. Was it Old Republic? Is that what it was, or no?
That game might have been on there, but I know there was. I think there was another one. Well, I'll do some research.
Yeah, because I didn't play many Star Wars. I didn't play many Star Wars games on consoles. Really, I'm pretty much playing most of it now with the Star Wars Battlefield. That's pretty much. I didn't. Besides playing Rogue Squadron, which GameCube with that. Why were those discs so awesome? They're so small, but you're like, Nintendo's got a disc. All right,
that's one thing that was I think Nintendo was smart about. And I know you liked it that Nintendo stuck with the cartridges. The advantage, of course, was they didn't have the loading time. And the Sega Saturn, and even the to me the PS2. I was on that boat of I liked my Nintendo. A lot of my friends went and bought the PS2, and I was like, this reminds me of a Commodore 64. I'll go grocery shopping while this game loads. I beat my game over here while yours is still loading, and I thought that was ridiculous. But the advantage was, the games were cheaper.
Yeah.
They were about $10-20 cheaper on the PS2, and that was just super smart. I eventually started here I go.
Yeah.
I go to Target. I'm looking for games I can buy. All the Nintendo games were $60 and up, and you look over at the PlayStation stuff. 30, 40
Same
bucks.
games.
I could get 2 PS2 games for the cost of this one Nintendo cartridge. And at that point, I started getting a little irritated. All right, I guess I would deal with the loading times of an optical media just to have a cheaper game. And that's when the GameCube comes out. But they still priced the games the same. And I think that was a mistake on their part because they had that proprietary optical disc, and it was just like the little tiny thing. And it didn't. It was kind of like a CD, DVD, hybrid kind of a thing, but it didn't really, play any normal media. But they had to do their own their own proprietary thing. But it was a cool little console. Just even the design of it.
The design, cool. I mean, literally, they named it right. It was a game, and the GameCube. It was a cube, perfect. And that's when they had. I think that was the first Nintendo system too that had memory cards. As well, because the Nintendo 64 did not have memory.
Well, the first PlayStation did.
PlayStation 1 did, but I never.
Nintendo 64, I do think it did. They fit on the cartridge, but you could only put. Remember, there was that slot because they had the 3-handle controller, and it had the little slot, and you could actually put the Rumble Pack in. And that was kind of I think the slot was originally designed for the memory card, and that Rumble Pack to make it vibrate was in response to PS2 because they had their dual shock controllers.
Dual shock controllers.
That was kind of like the first attempt at a little bit more of a gaming experience, rather than just playing it's more interactivity. Oh, I can feel, what the game, is what's happening in the game, and that was kind of that kind of thing is what led to. Like the Nintendo Wii, using your body and things like that. Like it kind of explored a whole new thing of a game. Instead of just pushing buttons, there's a little bit more depth to it of what's going on. But the N64 had that Rumble Pack thing, and you had to put like AA or AAA batteries in it that ran out super quick.
Yeah, AA. It was AA. Yeah,
it just became a big hassle. So.